Welcome everyone to another episode of Think Chatbot. I think this is episode 5, if I'm not mistaken. And it is the 15th of December, which means that it is also sadly the last Think Chatbot that we'll do this year. I think we're probably going to take a couple of weeks break, and it's going to be very sad. I'm going to miss this. But I might have to call you, Jacob, or over the Christmas period, just to say, do you want to join a call with me? We'll just build a chatbot like the good old days. But yeah, so I spoiled the surprise. Obviously, Jacob is here with us. Do you want to say hi, Jacob?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all.
Very good. So for those of you who haven't joined us before, in this series, what we try to do is we try to build a chatbot in about 45 minutes. We typically start from a very specific use case. And I think today, obviously, because it's the last one of the year, we have a bit of something a bit special, I suppose, this time. So do you want to explain what we're building, Jacob?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, as you mentioned, normally we kind of focus on the more typical practical business use cases for chatbots. But today, as it is Christmas and it's coming up to Christmas time, we thought we'd focus on something a little bit more fun. So we're going to make a Secret Santa chatbot using a few of the inbuilt integrations that ubisend has on offer.
Very nice. Yeah, I'm quite excited about this. We obviously, like Jacob said, we want to make this super relevant for HR teams or other departments potentially as well. And for this one, I think we found the nice common ground between doing something that's quite fun for the period, but also not super cringy, which is always very difficult. But I think we managed. So should we start? I'll share my screen. We'll turn off our cameras and we'll get started.
Of course, as in typical Think Chatbot sense, we're starting with a mirror board. Normally, obviously, we'd have the flow of an actual use case for a chatbot here, but this time it's just kind of the conversation flow that we want someone to go through when they're kind of creating a Secret Santa chatbot. So the purpose of this chatbot is essentially employees are going to be able to talk to it, find out the name that they've been given in their Secret Santa, and also find out the kind of the wish list of that person, or the giftee, I believe you could call them. And so they can work out what presents they want. Or if they kind of want to play it a bit differently, as you can see from the branch on the right, you can obviously not pull the person's wish list through depending upon the user's preferences. So it kind of gives a little bit of flexibility to the end user there.
Perfect. So a few things about this flow here. So the first thing is obviously, this is sort of Christmas themed, but importantly, this could be absolutely used for anything else within your business. So the typical use case for what we're about to build will typically be an inventory type thing. So you have loads of items for sale on your website, and you want to tell your chatbot users how many items you have of a specific product, how many you have left. You would potentially use this process, or I think we discussed earlier this morning that a couple of companies are using this process that we're going to go through to actually display who's booking which meeting rooms that day or a specific day, things like that. So although obviously we're going to go for a slightly fun approach here, this is absolutely relevant for a lot of other use cases. And then the second thing I want to mention is, so for this specific use case, because we want to mix things up a little bit and we want to show you some different features, we're going to actually use a spreadsheet integration, which, if I'm not mistaken, we're probably one of the only chatbot platforms to really offer this. And I really like it. I think it's really valuable. Some businesses still rely heavily on spreadsheets. And so having something like that is really good. It prevents the need for having all of your data on the internet or on the platform or on some sort of software, which not every single company has. And so it's quite valuable to have that. But just to, again, hammer that home, that if you didn't have your process into a spreadsheet, or all of this sort of data into a spreadsheet, you don't necessarily need to do so. If you had them on an external software, all of the things that we're going to do now could absolutely be done by swapping the spreadsheet for, an integration to some sort of software that you might have. Make sense?
Yeah, all makes sense to me.
All right, perfect. So you send me the cool spreadsheet here, which I think I have opened here. Perfect. So this is a CSV file, which is what we will need to use for this particular build. And in this CSV file, we have obviously 3 columns of the people on our team, who they're going to have to buy a gift for, and then each of these persons' wish list. So I guess what's quite interesting here is that we obviously collected this data before. I think towards the end we can potentially discuss how we could collect this data with a bot as well, which could be quite fun as well. But just so you know, the spreadsheet is right here. Okay, so should we get started?
Yeah, I think let's just jump straight into it today.
Okay, perfect. So I've obviously spun up a new ubisend install, like we usually do for these webinars. So this install has absolutely nothing in it. It's brand new, so it shouldn't have any extra conversations. So as you can see, it has a few conversations already by default, but all of those are created for you. Every new account has them. They just sort of help you get started without having to start from scratch every single time. And so where do you think we should start, Jacob?
I think probably the first thing that we'll do is, do you want to start by just uploading the spreadsheet first, and we'll get that in, and then we can kind of build a rough skeleton of the chatbot there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. So to upload the spreadsheet, what we need to do is we need to actually use this as an integration. So in the ubisend platform, we have a specific area for integrations, and it's a bit different than what you might have seen in other platforms if you haven't used us before. The main reason for that is we don't provide any first-party integrations. So anything out of the box, there's nothing in here. What we do provide instead is a really robust tool that allows you to integrate any third-party applications. So anything that has an API, you can actually integrate into the ubisend platform. So whether you want to integrate, let's say, Shopify or SuccessFactor or some software I've never heard of, or some software that your IT department has built 25 years ago, and whatever it is, your own database, whatever it is, you can integrate it into the ubisend platform. That's one of the powerful aspects of the platform. And so you would do this here in this specific section. So here you would have all of the authorization, API keys, etc., etc., etc. So you do all of that here. But now, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, we're actually doing spreadsheets. So a spreadsheet is basically an integration, but obviously with I guess, a set in stone format of the number of data that's in it. And so it's slightly different, but really they sort of work in a very similar way. So what we're going to do is we're going to upload a spreadsheet here. So I'm going to give the spreadsheet a name, which might be, what could we call it? Secret Santa. All right. So now I've created the spreadsheet's name, and I'm going to upload that file. So importantly, the file needs to be a CSV. So that's quite important. It can't be an XLS or any other format. Okay, cool. So now the spreadsheet is here. As you can see, it is active. It is in my platform. What we can do here from this page now is that we can edit the spreadsheet if we needed to, but we don't need to. We can create some lookups, which is what we're going to do later on. And obviously we could delete the spreadsheet if we don't need it anymore. Is that good enough for now? Should we start building the conversation?
Yeah, sorry about that. I just accidentally muted myself there. But yeah, I think let's jump into the jump into the conversation now and kind of get the rough skeleton in place before we start fleshing in some details.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Jacob has learned quite well from the last few episodes, I guess the last 4 or 5 episodes, that I'd quite like to create a conversation skeleton before we do anything more in depth. And the reason for that is quite simple. I like to plan ahead a little bit, and creating all of the integrations and the variables and all that sort of stuff is actually something that you should probably do later on, just to make sure that you have this structure in place. Make sure that you know what you're doing. You want to potentially test your conversation step by step. So you want to create a conversation first, make sure that all of the transition work properly, and then you want to bring in maybe the variables, make sure that all of these work, and then you want to bring in the integrations, make sure all of that works as well. So that's the way I like to work. I completely appreciate you might not want to do it that way, and you might want to go gung-ho and just create all of the integrations and do all of the geeky stuff first. But if I had to give a piece of advice, is actually building it this way rather than the other way. Okay, so let's call this the Secret Santa conversation. All right, and then this conversation will help employees know who they have to buy. Oh, I can't type. Gift for, and what their colleagues would like to receive. Okay, so as usual, I like to add quite a descriptive description, I guess. The main reason for that is you might have many people using your chatbot platform. You might have loads and loads of users in here. And so you want to make sure that when they glance through the conversation, which again, you could have 40 or 50 conversations in your platform. There's no limit in ubisend doesn't limit you in any way on the platform. So you could have as many conversations as you'd like. And so to make sure that all of this is well organized, you want to give a name and a description that's actually quite revealing about what this conversation is about. Okay, so to trigger the conversation, I guess, what should we do? Should we do a keyword as we usually do?
Yeah, I think we'll focus on a keyword for the sake of the video there.
Yeah, I think if you've watched these videos before, if you attended before, we tend to do these use cases with a keyword that triggers the conversation, just because it makes things easier for us to demonstrate that it all works for everyone. In real life, maybe you would have all sorts of different triggers. So if I click into this first drop down here, you can see that all of these events are available as triggers. And so there's a whole bunch of them, and that could really, I mean, you could create anything you'd like with this, which is really the powerful aspect of it. I think one of our, someone reviewed our platform not long ago and gave us a really glowing review. And I think he counted 45 or 55 events that you could use out of the box without even going down one step further. So there's literally hundreds and hundreds of ways that you could start a conversation or trigger a conversation. So to make things easier for us right now, what we're going to do is we're actually just going to do, if a message is sent to the bot that is equal to, what should we do? Secret Santa?
Yeah, something nice and topical for that.
Let's just do, yeah, Secret Santa. All right. So if someone sends this exact word, which obviously in real life would never happen, but for this, the purpose of this demonstration, it's completely fine. If someone sends this exact word, the conversation is going to start. That's the point of the trigger. Okay. Now the conversation is created, so to speak. There is what we have is a trigger, which is displayed here when a message is equal to Secret Santa. And then we have a step one, which is literally just an example message. So at the moment, this is going to be a fairly boring conversation, but I could trigger it. I could say Secret Santa, and it should just send us an example message. Perfect. All right, so this is what I mean by being able to jump back and forth. Obviously, within the platform, you have a demo section, which is really helpful for that. Once you know what you're doing, you obviously wouldn't test that every single time. Okay, so what are we doing first, Jacob?
So I think the first thing that the chatbot's going to want to do, because obviously worth mentioning that by this point in the conversation, the user in a real world example would have already said something along the lines of, I'm ready for Secret Santa, or what's my Secret Santa, something along those lines. So the first thing the chatbot's going to want to do is kind of gather their name so that it can go through and kind of pull through from the spreadsheet the information to do with that employee. Okay,
so that's a good point. So the first step we're going to do is probably ask the person's name. What is your name? Or asking name. I always give the step name a question, which is very confusing for people watching what I'm doing. Okay, so this step is now obviously asking name. So I just changed that again for admin purposes. It's quite helpful. And now what we're going to do is we're going to just create a message content that is going to be something fairly simple, like what should I say? Well, before I can tell you who you have drawn as a Secret Santa, can you tell me your name? Something like that?
Yeah, I think something nice and simple like that works.
Perfect. Okay, so I just saved this message. Again, in here, I quite frequently show this, but we have all sorts of message types that you could use. Here, we don't really need any other message type than just plain text. I think it just makes sense to have a plain text message here. But if we needed to, we could send a video, we could send a progress, we could send a payment, we could send carousels, which is lots of different images and all that sort of stuff. There's a whole bunch of options here on the left, which we're going to go to in a minute, go through some of them in a minute. But for now, this is again, building the skeleton of the conversation. And so here's what's happening. Okay, so what happens after that?
So once the user's given the name, they're obviously going to basically want to know exactly who they've been given. So this will be just kind of telling them who it is.
Cool. And so for this, we're going to say, great. This is who you've drawn I guess that's correct English.
I think
Perfect.
as well, looking at this step here as well, it might be quite nice to kind of follow up that message with the question about whether they want to receive the wish list or not.
Okay, so that's a good point. So within the platform, we can actually do multiple messages in one step, which is quite nice. It does two things. It breaks up the conversation a little bit, so it's not just like one big bubble. And then the second thing it does is it allows the bot to send more information to the user without requesting more actions from the user. So it just sort of cuts down on the steps that the user has to take to actually draw value from this conversation. So what we can do is go back to options, go back to the message content. And here what we have is this little add new button, which is really helpful. And so for this one, I guess we can use a different message type here. We can use a quick reply, which has these little buttons that we'll see in a second. So what are we saying? What are we saying?
I think we're basically just kind of asking, like, I can tell you your, I guess you call them a giftee, I guess that's the correct English. But I can tell you your giftee's wish list, or I can keep it a secret. It's up to you.
Okay. I can tell you your giftees. I'll be honest, I've never heard that word. So if you're making me write words that don't actually exist, I'll be angry. I'll look at the comment or the chat on the live recording, and people will be like, "This is not actually a word. What are you talking about, Jacob?"
So it's just part of the making up words to get them in the dictionary, you know.
Perfect. Okay. So I can tell you giftees. What did you call it?
Wish list.
Wish list. That's it. Okay. And so here we could have yes, please, or no, I'll surprise them. Okay. And so if I save this now, I can close this. And as you can see now, this specific bubble or this specific node within the conversation actually has two messages. So it has the first message, which is great, this is who you've drawn, and there's obviously nothing after that. And then I can tell you your giftee's wish list. Would you like to know what they want? Which is both a bubble, and also it has two little buttons that make it really, really easy for the user to actually move on to the next step. Okay, and so obviously we have two bubbles here. So what do we need to create? I suppose we need to create two messages after that. One for if they click yes, please, and one for if they click no, I'll surprise them. So let's just do that. So let's just call this one no thanks. And so for this to actually trigger, the user would have to click the no thanks or no, I'll surprise them, sorry, bubble, which means that it would only trigger if we do a message equals no, I'll surprise them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it all makes sense to me. So it's kind of, it's basically like when the user clicks this button, send this message.
Yeah, it's absolutely a flow-based transition here, which is sometimes gets a bad rap in the chatbot world, because I suppose everyone wants to make things very smart and very, AI driven and things like that. And we're probably, leading that trend a little bit of wanting to be really, really smart. And our platform completely allows you to do that. The reality of our experience within the chatbot industry is that when it's not necessary to use advanced smartness, which is not a word, you shouldn't do it. You should actually just provide the user experience that is the simplest user experience possible. And so imagining here that you wanted to do this transition with something cool, like, NLP, and figure out what the person said and move them to a different part. It's all really cool, and you could absolutely do that. So you could, I'm just going to type something here so I can close this, so I can explain what I'm talking about. So I could absolutely just say, leave this message here, not have any buttons, and let the user respond. And then for the transition, I could use some NLP to figure out, okay, what did they say? Did they say no or yes or maybe tomorrow or something like that? I could do all of that, but it would actually make the conversation poorer, because it means that we need to actually prepare as the people building this conversation. We need to actually prepare for a flurry of potential responses that the user might give, whereas actually all we need to know and all they want to say is yes or no. Really, that's the only thing that they want to do. And so in this instance, a button is actually much slicker, a much better experience for the user, for the person building the bot, for the platform handling it, for everyone involved. It's a lot easier. And so, yeah, this is just, I guess, a little rant about this, but it's just very important that if you're building your chatbots, you don't necessarily need to use all of the amazing tech all of the time. What needs to be simple actually should remain simple, and that's the best way to actually build something. Okay.
I suppose it kind of comes back down to that. No one really cares how fancy something is. They just want it to work. A lot of the time for the end user, like it can be the most powerful chatbot in the world, but if it doesn't tell them what they want quickly, then they're not particularly fussed about the power going on behind the doors.
Yeah, exactly. It's the usual marketing speak of no one's buying a drill, they're buying a hole, or no one's buying a drill, they're buying a picture hung on the wall, or no one's buying a drill, they're buying someone coming into their house and saying, "Oh, what a nice picture on your wall." You don't buy the tool, you buy whatever the output is, and it's the same thing here. You don't really care about the really fancy NLP doing something. All you want to do is move the person forward, and that's what you should present, and that's how you should build it. And we have plenty of opportunities to do really cool, amazing, funny, high tech stuff elsewhere. So we won't be missing that. Okay, cool. So message equals. So this one is the no thanks. So we're going to change that. I'm going to say, perfect. Good luck finding them something they like. I kind of want to put something funny, but I don't know what. I'm not being funny right now.
Yeah, I was trying to think of something funny as well, but my comedy is known for its just being absolutely appalling. So I was holding off there. I've heard they're difficult.
All right, cool. So this is for the no part of the branch. Obviously, we have a yes part of the branch as well. And so what we need to do here is just actually branch out this this conversation. So far, what I've done is every time I've created a new step, I've clicked this button that's just below the step that we're currently on, which obviously creates a step after the one we're currently on. You've probably noticed that there's another plus button that's on the right side of the bubble we're currently on, which actually allows me to create multiple steps and these slow branches that we might want to use. So here I could do that. I could click the plus button here, and then I'm going to name this one yes please, and then I'm going to say message. So exactly the same approach. And I think I said yes please. Was it yes please? I don't remember.
I believe so. There might have been an exclamation mark in there, but we can always come back and change that later.
Absolutely, nothing is set in stone. Okay, wise choice. This is what they've told me they'd like. All right, so let's double check the transition here. Yes, please. Okay, so it's working. No, it's not working. We haven't tested it yet, but it looks like it should work. So we have yes, please, which annoyingly is on the left, and the branch is on the right, which hurts my brain a bit, but doesn't matter. So we have this transition. If the person clicks yes, please, if they go on this right-hand side bubble, if they say no, I'll surprise them, they go on this left-hand side bubble. Perfect. Looks good?
All looks good to me.
Okay, let's give this a try before we actually add some data. So the trigger is secret Santa, which again, like Jacob mentioned earlier, it wouldn't necessarily be that. So I'm going to just send something random here. Okay, this is who you've drawn. Again, it doesn't have any data at the moment. We'll add all of that later on. And let's just do yes, please. Okay, wise choice. Let's just do quickly the other branch just to make sure that we haven't messed anything up, which it doesn't look like we have. I'm going to send some random words. Oh, I didn't notice that it has a little hat on the bot. It's looking good. It's the same one that we have on the website.
Yeah, just nice and creative there, and just kind of taking what we had off the website. Nothing too original there, but I quite like the little secret Santa hat. I thought it suited the video quite well.
Yeah, very nice. I think we should have hats ourselves for the start when we were on the camera, although that might have overstepped towards the cringy part of these type of episodes.
It's as you find out in the editing before I upload this live, I've just put like snow coming down over the cameras and everything like that.
We could actually have done that as well. I know that Zoom have some stuff like that, don't they? Okay, so it all worked. I obviously clicked out. Sorry about that. I clicked out, but as you've probably noticed that it actually worked, and we can actually go down the conversation properly. Okay, so now we've done the easy part. We've created the skeleton. as we've discussed, we don't have any data into here. We're not collecting any data. Sorry, we're not collecting any data, and we're not presenting any data. So obviously now we need to do the difficult bit. All right, so let's go through the conversation. The first thing we ask is for the user's name. So that's very, very important. That's the central data point that we need to use throughout the conversation to actually present the right corresponding data to the user using the bot. So if you've seen these episodes before, you'll probably know that the ubisend platform actually allows you to create your own variables into the platform. Very, very useful to collect data and store data into the platform and do all sorts of things with that data. So here we obviously ask for the user's name. And so what we probably want to do is go into integrations variables. And we have already here one that I created earlier, which is called employee name. So in here, we could actually log the person's answer to their name, which would obviously be the employee's name. So this one has just been created. I can actually just delete it so to show you how it works. So first, let's just call it first name. All right, so I've just created this new variable. So as you can see, it's incredibly easy. All I have to do is just give it a name. And so what I will do here is I'll go back to the conversation. I'll go back to this specific step where I'm asking for the user's name. And what I can do is I can go into options, transitions. So transitions is where we tell the bot what the user needs to do to go from this step to the next. So in this instance, for the user to go from this step, which is asking their name, to the next step, which is this is who you got, the user just needs to send a message. Again, we're going to ask for their name. So we can't really do much validation on that. It's quite difficult because names could be anything. So instead, we're just not doing any validation. We're just saying, if you send us a message, this is good enough for us. But as you can see here, we have a saved message as, and then I can click the drop down here and the little variable that I created just appears. And so I can just save that as first name. All right. So what we're doing now here is we're telling the bot to save whatever the user's answer to this specific question into this specific variable. And then this allows us to reuse this value elsewhere in the conversation or elsewhere in the platform. So if I want to send an email to this person, I can pull out their first name from here, or I can use this first name to actually look for their name into the spreadsheet here and look for the corresponding name that they have to buy something for, and then the corresponding wish list that we have here. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. So it's just kind of like a VLOOKUP in a way, just through a few different platforms.
Yeah, that's right. So we can use that value to then do the VLOOKUP like you just precisely called it. Okay, so one thing that's quite valuable as well, I always like to show this, is that there's actually a visual representation of this variable being filled at this step transition. Quite valuable, because obviously you don't necessarily want to every time go and have a look at the specific step details. So that's quite good. So we know that this is happening. Between this step and this step, we're saving whatever value that is into this variable. Okay, cool. Now, we're going to get to the fun part. So obviously, what we've done before is we've uploaded a spreadsheet. Now, the spreadsheet is here. As you can see, we've looked at it. It has 3 columns. It has a column called name, column, I can't say that word, called Gifty, and one called wish list. So all of these columns have values, and all of these values are filled for every single row. So we know that Alex needs to buy a gift for James, and James likes beer and a new pint glass. James needs to buy a gift for Sarah, and Sarah likes wine. Okay, so very simple spreadsheet that you could have. An example of using this could be Alex and his birthday, James and his birthday, Sarah and his birthday, and you could create the exact same conversation we're creating right now, just to find out when is your colleague's birthday, or when is your boss's birthday, if you want to buy him or her a gift. And so what we're going to do basically is we're going to actually create these lookups like Jacob just mentioned. So within the ubisend platform, what you can do with the spreadsheets is VLOOKUPs. If you've used that in Excel, you'll know exactly what that means. We're basically saying, look into this column or whatever column for a value. Okay, let's say the value is Alex, and then tell me what the corresponding value, so do a vertical lookup for the value in this column. which would be, beer and pint glass. So this is exactly what you can build into the ubisend platform. So for this one, this specific example, we need to do 2 VLOOKUPs. We need to do one for finding the person who we're going to have to buy a gift for, and then we need to do another one for to find the gift that they want, their wish list. So let's do the first one. Finding the giftee. I keep using that word. I'm sure that's not the word. This VLOOKUP will help you users find who they to buy a gift for. All right, and so what we're doing here is we're doing a very, very simple check. So if the name of the row, the name of the column here, which is name, is equal, oops. And then here we can pull the variable that we've used before, first name. Make sense?
Yeah, it all makes sense to me there.
Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do another one, find finding what they want. This VLOOKUP will help the users find what the giftees want. And then we're going to do the same thing here. All right, cool. So now we have two different lookups, one for the giftee, one for what they want, and we can close this. So this should be all set. So what we want to do now is we want to go into the conversation builder, go into these steps and start adding these variables. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit complicated because there's a new concept to bring into this conversation. So obviously, into the ubisend platform, as we've seen before, you can create your own variables. So at the moment, I have a variable called first name, which is right here. This variable I've created myself. It's in the platform, super easy to use. What we also have is pre-built variables. So here I could use current minute and bring up what the current minute is into the conversation. So these are variables that are created within the platform that our developers have created for us, which just makes it easier because you don't need to build them yourselves. Now, following the same format, what we need to do is basically use this to resurface values from the spreadsheet. Now, if you remember, the spreadsheet has three columns: name, giftee, and wish list. So what we want to do is, once we've collected the name, what we want to do is we want to go and do a VLOOKUP for this specific value under giftee here, which would be obviously using an advanced setting. So we need to do this integration. So we're going to use a spreadsheet value, and we're going to use this secret Santa spreadsheet, and we're going to find giftee lookup. Perfect. So that's done. That's set up. And now using that, what we can do is we can do 0 point giftee. Okay, so what are we doing here? What we're basically doing is we're telling the bot to go into the spreadsheet and find the very first value. So this is a bit confusing, but in programming language, the very first value is quite frequently starts from 0. So you count from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, except as opposed to 1. It's a bit confusing, but that's just the way that these geeks do things. So what I'm doing is I'm looking for the first value under this specific column. And so I can save that and close it. All right, cool. So let's just have a look at this, make sure it's all working properly. So what are we doing? We're asking the user to tell us their name, and then we're using that name as a lookup to go and find giftee number 1. Secret Santa. Okay, my name is Alex. Okay, so this is who you've drawn. You've drawn James, which is that correct? Yes. Okay, so what's it done here is it's used my name, which is here, logged it into a variable, perfect, and then used that variable to go and look into the spreadsheet for the very first time that this name is mentioned, and then look vertically across and just tell me what is the corresponding value into the giftee column, and this value is James. All right, makes sense?
Yeah, it all makes sense to me. It's just kind of basically a very smart way of signposting the chatbot of where to look, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. You're just telling him, or him, it's a chatbot, telling it what the value you're looking for is. And it's just going to go and say, all right, this is the value I'm going to start with. I'm going to look vertically towards the right up until the point of the column that you've actually told me to look at. And then I'm just going to give you whatever value that was. So if I do James, now I'm James. Okay, who you got? You've got Sarah, which hopefully is correct. Yes, perfect. All right. Okay, so hopefully this all makes sense. What we can do now is obviously, if I say yes, please, and I want to know what Sarah wants for Christmas, unfortunately, we don't have any value in here. So what should I do? I should obviously change this to the next values. So to do this, we're going to do exactly the same thing that we've just done, but for the next column on the right. So here we've done 0 gifty, which is column number 2. And then now here, if we want to know what this person actually wants, we would have to do obviously column wish list. And again, we're going to start from 0 because that's how we count in developer terms. And we're just going to do exactly the same thing. So we're going to go into message content, advanced settings, so that we can set up the integration with the spreadsheet, spreadsheet value, secret Santa, what they want. So this is the other lookup. And then now this is set up. So what I can do is, this is, I might have changed this. They told me they would like, and then we're going to do the same thing. So curly bracket, 0. So because we start from 0, and then it's a wish list, if I remember correctly. Oops, no, we don't need that. Save that. And I'm going to add a little period here so that it just looks a bit nicer. And closed. All right, so now we've done this exact same integration here, exact same lookup, but just for the third column. And so we're going to have a look at what this did. All right, secret Santa. All right, what's my name? My name is Alex. Okay, so I've drawn James, and I don't know James. He's in a different department. So let's see what James would like. Okay, they told me that he would like beer and a new pint glass. Let's have a look. Perfect. Let's do another one. Let's do secret Santa, obviously the trigger. And then let's say I'm James. So James is buying for Sarah. He doesn't know Sarah. What does Sarah want? She wants, they told me they would like wine. Who wouldn't? So that's perfect. So we've basically created the entire conversation. So if we look back at the structure that Jacob built for us, we've basically built exactly that. So it's Christmas time, secret Santa, gather the employee's name. We've done that. We tell the employee who they drew as their secret Santa. And then we allow them to say, would you like to know what they want, or would you like to create a surprise? And if they do want to know what they want, it presents the data that we've gathered before. Are you happy with this bot, Jacob? Is that what you were hoping for?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I think it kind of solves the majority of the secret Santa kind of process there. And also it's quite nice as well because it's opens up quite a few different windows for doing, like say, like expanding upon it in future years or anything like that.
Yeah, I think importantly here, so there's a few things that I want to touch on before we actually wrap up the video. So the first is, obviously what we've done here is we've used the spreadsheet integration. The spreadsheet integration is, although it's not necessarily difficult, I wouldn't say it's difficult, it's obviously a slightly different way of doing a typical type of integration. So like I said at the start, what you might do here is you might actually have all of this data on who's drawn who, or what each person wants. You might have all of that already in the bot, or you might have all of that in an actual database somewhere. So you could do this slightly differently than using spreadsheets. The second thing I wanted to mention is a part of this whole process is obviously not present in the demo that we've just created. So for instance, collecting what each of the employees would like for Secret Santa could absolutely be done by the bot. And I think that would be the best way to do it. So I think if you look back at last week's or the week before episode, we did a whole episode around broadcasting and announcing new HR policies or employee policies. And again, obviously, you don't want to overdo this, but if you want to do something that's a bit fun, you might want to use these features, which is basically sending a message to everyone using the bot saying, look out, Secret Santa is coming up in a month. Please tell the bot what you would like to get as a Secret Santa if you wish. And so you could actually create a conversation around collecting that data through the bot straight away. And so you don't need to mess around with actually building a spreadsheet yourself or anything like that, making obviously the process a little bit slicker. And then the last thing I want to mention is all of this is all fun and games around Secret Santa, and as an HR department, you might have to deal with that and creating this experience for your employees. But really, this is a process that can be used in various number of ways. One way, I think I probably have mentioned it before, but one way we've seen departments use this is with birthdays, which again might not be like the most important things you do with your day, but it could solve this whole thing. So you could actually just say, when is my boss's birthday, or when is my employee's birthday, or the bot could just prompt that it is your employee's birthday, you should probably do something about it. So those are the sort of stuff that people do with this. And then if we move away from HR in general, this is really, really helpful for things like checking inventory. So I would like to buy some trousers, please. Okay, we have blue, red, and green. And then if you click blue, red, or green, it tells you how many stock there is left in the shop of that specific blue trousers. And that's, again, could be completely done with a spreadsheet. Loads and loads of small shops or smaller operations like that still use spreadsheets, and it's completely fine. And so you could do all of this with this specific conversation builder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's nice to touch upon the kind of bad choice of wording here, but rather than calling it, say, like a real world example of how you could use this integration, as opposed to the fun little side of Secret Santa there.
Yeah, I think it's completely. Yeah, I think it's fun. I think we've used this internally, didn't we? So we've actually built something similar for the ubisend stuff, and that's what we've used before, because obviously we eat our own dog food, and that was quite a fun exercise to do internally anyway. So okay, sadly, this is the last one for the year. It's been really, really fun. I think we've done five episodes this year. We obviously started quite late, but it's becoming a weekly occurrence now, which obviously is not going to be weekly for the next couple of weeks because ubisend will break until the 4th of January. So are we having an episode on the 5th?
That's something that I was going to speak to you about, whether you wanted to do it straight on the 5th or maybe the week later on the 12th. I don't think we've quite sorted that out perfectly yet.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out. But either way, thank you very much for attending. It's been fun doing these webinars or these demonstrations. It's been fun playing with our own platform and trying to, build things from requirements that you guys send us and answer all of your questions live and build all of this live with you guys watching or even watching the recordings later on. You can expect a lot more of that next year. 2021 will be extremely video based for ubisend. We're planning a lot of content around the platform, recording ourselves, building things and building things based on your requirements or things that we've heard from clients or things that we've heard other chatbot platforms not do very well, and we just want to show you how amazing we are. And so yeah, expect a lot of that. If you'd like to be updated on all of the cool videos we're putting out there, feel free to go onto our YouTube channel and just subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll see all of the latest videos instantly. And if not, obviously just go into ubisend.com/drop-in to join our next drop-in session, which may or may not be the 5th of January. And until then, do you have any last words for the year, Jacob?
Just thank you again for all your time, Alex, and your expertise over the last kind of few weeks as we've been recording these videos. Thank you as well, everyone, for watching. If you do ever have any kind of, say, specific challenges you want us to tackle, or maybe you've got an internal challenge that you think a chatbot could solve, but you'd rather see it in action, so always feel free to kind of send us an email at any point, and we'll be able to see if we can work it into any future episodes.
Definitely. All right. Enjoy your holidays, everyone, and see you next year.